I was a stage manager right out of college. I was making $3.24 an hour. I didn't really know what, and I didn't cry. Something magic could happen, and that's how I feel about Horizon.
Kevin Costner, the enduring symbol of American cinema, the stoic protector in The Bodyguard, the dreamer in Field of Dreams, and the fearless filmmaker who breathed life into Dances with Wolves, forever changing the way Hollywood tells its stories, rose not through privilege, but through will, faith, and an unshakable belief in the power of human stories. From the dusty streets of Linwood, California, the son of a ditch digger and a social worker, he learned early the language of labor and quiet endurance. His father's scarred hands and his mother's weary grace shaped a boy who understood survival long before success. 2 years before he was born, tragedy struck when his brother Mark lived only a day, an unspoken sorrow that shadowed their home, teaching him that love and loss often share the same breath. Growing up, Kevin learned to pack, move, and begin again, each box sealed with the lesson that strength is built in silence. By his teens, he was a quiet dreamer, writing poems, singing in choirs, and imagining worlds that didn't move beneath his feet. After graduating with a degree in marketing and finance, he followed the expected path: a steady job, a safe life, but safety felt like slow death. Then fate intervened on a flight home from his honeymoon, when a chance meeting with Richard Burton ignited the courage to chase his calling. Within weeks, Costner quit his job, packed his life into a That Sun, and drove toward Los Angeles. What followed were years of hunger, rejection, and relentless persistence. He scrubbed boats, gave bus tours, slept cold, and whispered to himself, just one more day. His first film, Sizzle Beach, USA, humiliated more than it helped, and The Big Chill cut his scenes entirely. But he kept showing up. In 1985, Silverado finally turned the camera his way, and the world began to see what he had always carried: truth. The Untouchables made him a star, Bull Durham and Field of Dreams made him a legend. And in 1990, with Dances with Wolves, the boy from Linwood silenced every doubt, earning 7 Oscars and rewriting Hollywood history. Yet behind the applause was loneliness. Fame fed him and hollowed him in equal measure. Success followed with Robin Hood, JFK, and The Bodyguard, but the higher he rose, the quieter his heart became. His first marriage to college sweetheart Cindy Silver, once built on laughter and shared struggle, unraveled under the weight of fame and distance. Their 1994 divorce, one of Hollywood's costliest, left him shattered yet still tender, a father learning to love his children through separation. Then came brief solace with Bridget Rooney, a kind woman who saw past the legend and bore him a son, Liam, in 1996, a quiet redemption born of responsibility and grace. Years later, he found peace again with Christine Baumgartner, a model and designer 20 years his junior, whose calm steadiness anchored him. Their 2004 wedding at his Aspen ranch marked not just love but homecoming, and together they built nearly 2 decades of family life, raising 3 children in laughter and sunlight. Yet even heaven can erode. The demands of Yellowstone and his passion project Horizon pulled him away, and in 2023, Christine filed for divorce, ending 19 years of what once felt eternal. The world saw headlines and dollar signs, but what it missed was a man standing beneath a western sky, reading the end of a love story he thought would last. Now, at 70, Kevin Costner stands not as a fallen star but as a survivor of silence, a man who turned loss into legacy, work into worship, and heartbreak into art. He has learned that greatness isn't measured in applause, but in the strength to rise when it fades, and that truth, like him, never stops shining, even when the lights go out. The agreement was ironclad yet cold, ensuring the end would be businesslike. Christine's lawyers sought $248,000 per month for child support. The court reduced it to $63,000, but no number could ever quantify what had been lost. Under the prenup's terms, she was ordered to vacate their Santa Barbara home, the house where each child had taken first steps and first swims. Neighbors said the day she left, the curtains fluttered like wings. Kevin came home that evening to rooms that smelled faintly of her perfume and the ocean, and for the first time in years, he realized silence has a scent. Weeks later came the cruelest cut photographs of Christine walking along the coast beside Josh Connor, a man Kevin had once called a friend. They had shared dinners, laughter, trust, and now those images in the tabloids turned the world sideways. Proof of nothing, pain of everything. For a man who had built his career on loyalty, it felt like a betrayal that belonged to another lifetime, and yet here it was, folded into the one he still loved. "I didn't want this," he told friends quietly. "I still love her, but some things you can't unsee." For the second time in his life, he found himself dividing a world he had built by hand. But this time, it wasn't money that was halved, it was his children's laughter, now split between houses, weekends, and silences. They had been together nearly 19 years, and those years did not leave quietly. She fought to preserve the children's comfort, he fought to protect their innocence. She said the marriage had become lonely, he said he had been trying to provide. Between them stood 3 children and the ghost of what once was perfect. By late 2023, the court had spoken. By early 2024, the union was legally over. The prenup held, but so did the ache. "The first time," he told a confidant, "I lost half my wealth. This time, I lost half my heart." On set, he kept filming through the storm, the man directing Horizon while his own horizon fell apart behind him. Fame had never felt so hollow. He had once been the bodyguard who promised to keep others safe. Now he was the one left unguarded, bleeding quietly behind the camera. Years from now, what will linger are not the court filings, but the quiet frames of a life once whole, a father in a trailer, script pages trembling in his hands as desert wind rattles the walls, a kitchen light left burning in Santa Barbara, no one home to turn it off, a suitcase crossing a stone driveway while 3 children watch from a window, too young to understand how something can end without a villain. And out of that silence rises a truth deeper than fame, that no one, however powerful, can escape the labor of love, that success cannot replace presence, that some losses teach what triumph never could. When the years stretch long and quiet, the numbers will tell their own story: 7 children, 3 mothers, and 1 heart that kept trying to build a single home out of them all. It was never about how many lives he touched, but how deeply he tried to stay in each. Kevin Costner continues to co-parent, to appear at school plays and birthdays, to keep his word in the quiet ways that count. Because love, when real, does not end with signatures, it becomes duty, then memory, then grace. In the story of Kevin Costner, this was not just another heartbreak. It was the fall of a man who once built worlds and learned he could not keep his own. It was the storm that stripped him of everything but faith, the chapter that taught him that even after building horizons for everyone else, the only one that truly matters is the one reflected in the eyes of your children. Sometimes it takes betrayal, not death, to remind us that even angels can turn away and that the greatest strength is to keep loving in their absence. What remains when the lights fade, when the applause stops, and when fate quietly takes back almost everything you once held? For Kevin Costner, the answer was never in the roar of the box office, but in the quiet debt of love he owed to his parents, Bill and Sharon, the 2 souls who built him long before Hollywood ever named him a star. They were quiet people, Bill and Sharon Costner, who never sought the world's attention, only its decency. They raised their sons in small houses that smelled of soap and hard work, where the sound of a paycheck being folded on the kitchen table meant more than any applause. His father, Bill, dug ditches, fixed power lines, and came home each night with dust in his hair and faith in his hands. His mother, Sharon, spent her days listening to other people's sorrows as a social worker, then came home to make sure her family never went without tenderness. From them, Kevin learned 2 lessons that would shape everything that followed: that work is sacred, and that kindness, no matter how quiet, leaves echoes that outlive us. Yet for all the stories he would tell, the one he could never finish was theirs. When his mother fell ill, he was far away, chasing the dream they had sacrificed for. Hollywood was roaring, premieres, contracts, cameras, but her voice still cut through it like a small, steady prayer. "You're doing fine," she told him once on the phone. "Just don't forget to rest." He promised he wouldn't, not realizing it would be the last promise he'd ever make to her. When the call came, he was on set, the lights too bright, the noise too loud. "She's gone," someone whispered. He didn't move. For a long time, he simply stood there, hands trembling around the script she'd once told him to chase. He didn't make it in time to hold her hand, didn't get to hear the last words that only mothers save for their sons. At her funeral, he stood between his brothers, trying to look brave for a woman who had spent her life being brave for everyone else. She carried other people's pain so they wouldn't have to, he said quietly. Maybe she carried too much. He thought grief might loosen its grip, but 2 years later it returned crueler, closer. His father, Bill, followed her into the silence, as though one heart could not bear to beat without the other. The news came early in the morning. Kevin sat alone in a hotel room, his phone still glowing with the words that broke him a second time. He had missed his mother's last breath, and now he would miss his father's as well. It's the curse of distance, he said once. You chase everything you think will make them proud, and when it finally does, they're gone. At the funeral, the air was thick with the smell of rain and cut grass. He looked down at the casket and thought of the hands that had built every fence, every toy, every piece of the man he'd become. He never asked for credit, Kevin whispered. Just for honesty. I hope I've earned some of his pride. That night, he sat in his car long after everyone had gone, headlights off, the dashboard light flickering across his face. There were no cameras, no audience, just a son realizing the two people who had held the world steady were gone. Losing them so close together hollowed something out of him. He had fame, wealth, 1,000 faces smiling from movie posters, yet suddenly none of it had weight. When your parents are gone, he once said, the world feels different. You become the parent of yourself. Maybe that's why in the years that followed, his films turned softer, filled with fathers and sons, with goodbyes that echoed too long, with land and time and forgiveness. He stopped chasing the noise and began to listen again to the kind of silence his parents once lived by, the silence that meant work, love, and presence. Sometimes he drives out to the ranch, stands beneath the same wide sky they once dreamed under, and whispers a line they would have understood, I made it, but not without you. Because the truth is simple, the world taught him how to shine, but his parents taught him why it mattered. And when the applause fades, it is still their voices he hears, a father's steady hum, a mother's soft prayer, reminding him that every story worth telling begins and ends at home.